My friends, summer has officially arrived, which means there's a lot of people out there right now screwing up some burgers. And I'm not gonna let you be one of them. Here's 8 easy tips to make sure your next burgers are your best ones yet. Now let's go! I would honestly be lying to you if I told you that the first tip of today didn't make a huge difference when making a great burger, and that is to grind your own meat. Which, if you don't want to do, that is absolutely fine, because I've got 7 more great tips that don't have to do with this. However, for me, this is the difference between a good burger and an excellent burger. It really is that simple. And look, I'll give you 2 good reasons why I personally love to grind my own meat. The first being that a lot of store-bought ground beef is really overworked. It's overmixed, which, if you ask me, makes for a tighter, denser burger. When you grind your own meat and you pack it together just the right amount, man, that makes such a big difference when you bite into that burger. It really is so tender. The second reason is a little bit of a strange one, but I just don't know how many cows are in one little pack of ground beef, and it weirds me out. For my own homemade ground beef, I know there's a max of only 3 different animals going in there, and that just makes me feel a little better. I don't know why. If that also weirds you out, let me know in the comments. I don't know if this is a thing or if it's just in my head, but I just like knowing that it's just 3 cows. The 3 different cuts that I usually use when making burgers are brisket, chuck roast, and sirloin. However, today I found a really good deal on tri-tip, so I'm using that in place of the brisket. A lot of the times I'm just experimenting with different cuts and seeing how they work together. You also don't need to have 3 different cuts. If you want to make it with straight brisket, that's going to be amazing. If you want to make it with something like straight chuck roast, that's going to be amazing. I wouldn't recommend using straight sirloin because, in my opinion, that would make your burger far too lean. Although if you're watching calories or trying to lose weight, that could be a good option. From a culinary standpoint, it's not. When I'm using these 3 cuts of beef, I'm usually getting a burger mix that's about 25 to even 30% fat. 80-20 is fine. A little more fat, I think, is even better. So to start, I'll just take my little slicing knife here, and all you need to do with these is just cut them into sort of big pieces like this. Just make sure they're gonna fit into your meat grinder. Easy as that. Does not need to be very accurate. Sometimes I'll trim away a little bit of this fat around the outside. Just kind of gets that chewy fat there on this tri-tip. If you think you need to trim it a little, go ahead. And then again with this, we're just gonna slice it up. Wow. See, I'm glad I bought this tri-tip. Look at that. Just looks super beautiful. It's almost hard to turn this into ground beef. It looks so good. It'd be amazing just to cook it like this. Another thing to keep in mind when you're making homemade ground beef is to keep everything really cold. Right now I have my meat grinder attachment in the freezer, chilling out for about 20 minutes. This meat is straight out of the fridge. It's nice and cold. Only got to do this chuck roast now. Making quick work of all this meat. This only takes a minute. I'm gonna grind these burgers using my KitchenAid meat grinder attachment, but if you don't have one of these, no worries. You can actually buy a meat grinder for pretty cheap on Amazon these days. And judging by the reviews, it looks like a lot of them actually work pretty well. If you're interested, I will put a link to some of those down in the description. On another note, I got a bowl with ice and water. Another bowl on top. That's again just to keep everything nice and cold. Now I'll just start working all my meat through. And there we are. That only took 5 minutes. Super easy. I'm gonna pull it out of the ice. Took my watch and ring off, right? So I can just get in here now and just mix this as gently as I like. You know, I don't want to really mix it well. That's something you do when you're making a sausage, which I'm not trying to make, right? I'm literally just mixing this so that the beef is mixed together, right? That's it. Because you think about it, when you actually form the burger itself, you're kind of mixing it again. So right there, I see everything's just nicely mixed. I don't have like a big chunk of lean meat in one area. That's completely done. And every time I do this, I just find it so exciting. Every grind is a little bit different. When the ratios are a little bit different, it's just fun to do. Now I'm gonna take out what I need for today's video. The rest of it I like to vac pack so it stays nice and flat and I can store it in the freezer without taking up too much space. Having said that, if you don't have a vac pack machine, just get a big gallon Ziploc bag and just smash it down in that. It will work as well. Tip number 2 is gonna be to make sure you measure and form the patties correctly. A lot of people get this wrong and they turn into giant meatballs, which you don't want. I start by just pushing this into a ball. Again, not a lot of mixing going on with these burgers, and I'm just shaping it a little bit by hand. Give it a little roll like this, and I'll actually spray this with just a little bit of oil so those patties don't stick. So what we're going for here, I'm making sure I have one clean hand. And what I'm doing is I'm gonna take the bun I'll be using for the burgers, more to come on the bun later, and I'm just holding it directly above the meat. I want the meat to stick out about an inch and a quarter bigger than the bun all the way around. And you do that because when you cook any protein, it shrinks a lot, and burgers are not excluded from that list. So when this thing goes on the grill, by the time it comes off, it's gonna be way smaller. So we have to account for that shrinkage so we don't end up with like a little meatball and then just all bun on the outside, or too much burger sticking out around the edges, although I'd rather have that than too little. Now, the next next thing I want to do is just dimple the middle of the meat here. You see this? Because as it shrinks, it tends to mound up. So you make that dimple, so when it shrinks flat. Again, just avoiding the meatball. Here we go. Just form up the rest of my burgers. In hindsight, I wish I had put a little piece of parchment paper under these burgers so they'd be easier to flip, but it will work no matter what. I'm not perfect. They're gonna be just fine anyway. Now moving on to tip number 3, and this is a big one, seasoning the burger correctly. If you're looking for a really great seasoning for burger, salt, pepper, and garlic powder mixed together is a really, really great seasoning. I have some right here. I just whipped it up. And so I'm gonna season up my burgers on this side, and that looks really good. But I'll tell you what I'm even more excited about, and that is utilizing liquid salts. Now you may be thinking, Sonny, what the hell are liquid salts? I'll tell you. Things like soy sauce, things like Worcestershire sauce, which by the way is made from anchovies. I don't know if you knew that. These two in combination on your burgers are gonna bring this umami flavor punch that is gonna blow your mind. They are seriously so, so good. In fact, you could just use these alone to season the burger, but having that salt, pepper, and garlic powder is also gonna be really nice. So I'm just gonna like literally just sprinkle some on, a little bit of my soy sauce here. I would do more if I was only doing this, but since we already have the salt, we'll be fine, right? And I'm just gonna just dab that in. Look at that. This has got me really excited. Oh my God, can you imagine this over charcoal? This is gonna be nuts. All I'm gonna do now is flip these burgers over and do the same exact thing on the other side. Again, the parchment would have been much easier just for that, although it wasn't so bad. Now I'm gonna let these sit in the seasoning just in the amount of time it takes me to fire up my coals and get them ready to cook. But before we do that, let me introduce today's sponsor, Element, which has been a really helpful part of my path towards a healthier lifestyle. Because with all this great food we're cooking and eating here on this channel, I have to keep exercising and I have to stay healthy in order to do it. And getting proper electrolytes is a huge part of that process. Element is an electrolyte drink mix free of sugar, artificial colors, or any unnecessary ingredients. And it's formulated for anyone who's on a mission to restore health through hydration. And it's perfectly suited for athletes, sauna lovers, people who are fasting, or anyone who's on a keto, paleo, or low-carb diet. Each serving of Element contains 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. And these are not just random numbers, it's a measurement backed by clinical data, the underlying science behind salt, and Element's founders' collective experience of coaching thousands of clients on nutrition and lifestyle over the years. Simply just mix a pack with water to enjoy all the benefits of electrolytes. And as a chef, I can tell you it tastes absolutely great. My personal favorite flavors are citrus, salt, and grapefruit. And with any purchase, my subscribers will get a free Element sample pack with 8 different flavors so you can find the ones you love. Get your free Element sample pack with any purchase at drinkelement.com/ThatDudeCanCook. You can also try the new Element Sparkling, which is a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. Thank you, Element, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to these grilled burgers. Moving on to tip number 4, and this is one of my personal favorites. Take an onion, you don't really even have to peel it, right? I'm just gonna chop it directly in half like this, and then I'm simply just gonna put a little bit of oil in a vessel. You don't need too much, about 1/4 cup. If you don't have one of these, you can absolutely just use a fork. That's what I usually do, and just stick it in this onion at about a 45-degree angle, something like this. Let it sit in the oil, and before we put our burgers on, we're gonna use this half onion to clean that grill. And it's not just gonna clean the grill, but it's also gonna leave it with this incredible onion scent that is just priming it for the ground beef coming next. Another beautiful thing about this is once you're done, just stick this onion back in the oil, take this thing out, wrap it up in plastic or a lid, stick it in the fridge, and reuse it 3, 4, 5 times if you're doing a lot of grilling. This is a great thing to have around because the longer that you use it, the softer the onion gets, and therefore the better it works. I worked in restaurants and we always had this for our grill. Tip number 5 is to make a garlic and herb butter to brush your burgers with as they grill. To make this, just melt down some butter, add in your crushed garlic, cook on low heat for about 4 minutes, then shut off the heat and add whatever herbs you want to use. I just did a little sprig of rosemary, but you could also do some thyme or even sage if you want. Start by using that onion trick to clean off your grill, and then tip number 6 is to use a 2-zone setup to cook your burgers. And I like starting mine over here on the cooler zone. I then just pop a lid on it and let these burgers smoke away for about 6 or 7 minutes. And now all I need to do is spin this top rack around so those burgers are sitting directly above the coals to sear. I like to do this so I'm not flipping and flopping the meat too many times, thus thus reducing breakage. And I also just like a really light char on my grilled burgers. I feel like grilled burgers are just getting burned way too often. If for some reason you like more char on your burgers, you could also try doing the opposite of what I did here today by starting the burgers over the hot coals and then rotating it over to the cooler side. After rotating my burgers over the coals, I let them sear for about 1 minute before flipping and then brushing with the garlic and herb butter. Sear for another minute on the other side before adding whatever kind of cheese you like. I just did some really good sharp cheddar. Once that cheese has melted, your burgers are absolutely ready to go. Just take them off and give them a good 3 or 4 minute rest while you work on tip number 7, which is finding a great bun. For a thicker burger like I'm making here today, I'm always choosing a brioche bun. On the flip side of that, if I'm making a smash burger, I'm almost always choosing a Martin's potato roll. I would also recommend you use that garlic and herb butter to brush your buns before toasting them over the hot coals. That can only do them a lot of good. And finally, tip number 8 is just to make a really good special sauce to go with your burger. It just makes it better. I make mine with mayonnaise, ketchup, mustard, chopped dill, pickle, onion powder, garlic powder, and paprika, and it slaps every time. And now it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Oh my God, I need to be alone with this. The meat has so much flavor and it's so tender. The bun is perfectly crispy and so fluffy, and that special sauce to tie everything together. My God, that is good. That is just so good. Forgot I had some raw onions here too. I'll throw them in. If you do like using raw onions in your burgers, soak them in ice cold water for about 15-20 minutes first. Takes away a lot of that harsh spice and it makes them so crunchy. It's a great trick. Let's try it with the onion. And that is a beautiful burger experience. I wish it for all. Thanks for watching today, my friend. If you're interested in written recipes, I have 55 of my personal favorites. You can find them in my Master in the Making ebook by clicking the link down in the description. And if you want to keep learning today, here are 2 more of my personal favorite grilled recipes. This chicken shawarma is absolutely amazing. Until next time, you know I love you and I'm out.